Bakotunes podcast is here once again with Matt Munoz, and on this episode, we proudly welcome East LA's finest and indeed an American treasure, Los Lobos. Many of you listeners may only know them from the movie and soundtrack to La Bamba, but hold on, that's only one shot at tequila in their long and creative musical careers. High school homies at Garfield High in East Los, making noise in the garage, then hitting the Mexican restaurant circuit, and then diving into the middle of the Hollywood punk rock mosh pit with traditional Mexican music. It's wild, vatos. If you were around during the 80s, you'll remember the classic 1984 How Will the Wolf Survive? An album so good, Rolling Stone named Los Lobos Band of the Year alongside Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Talk about born in the USA, Los Lobos have always maintained their integrity by staying true to their Latino roots and respect for the elements that have helped shape who they are. Rock and roll, Tex-Mex, folklorico, and blues. Their timeless music is a soundtrack to the American landscape and a source of inspiration to artists everywhere. It doesn't get any more original than this, one of my all-time favorite bands. Here is Louie Perez of Los Lobos on Bakotunes Podcast, episode 56, brought to you by Bakotopia.com.
Hi, Matt. Louie Perez from Los Lobos.
Well, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I'm home, and that's always kind of nice. We've been working a whole bunch. It's good to be home for just a little piece of change here for a few days. We got home, Monday. And we've got, a few days, and then head back out for a bit. And it's been like this for most of the summer.
And most of your lives.
Yeah, that's certainly always, in the back of my mind,
Just what's one? It's the endless tour. It keeps going.
And this year was, we started this year real early. We started in February with an acoustic tour of the U.S., and that brought us to like around April, and then we took a little bit of a break, and then we went to Europe for like 3.5 weeks. Then we came back, and by June 1st, it felt like it was time to hang the Christmas lights up. But 6 more months to go. I find myself, complaining about having to get up at 3:45 in the morning to drive an hour and a half to an airport to make like 2 connections, and then having to drive, another 2 hours to a gig. I'll find myself, kind of moaning and groaning, and then I just got to remember, wait a second, Louie, man, you got the best job in the world. What are you complaining about?
You got the best attitude. I hear, you figured it out. I think there's a lot of musicians out there that need to talk to you about that.
Oh yeah. It's the way I look at it is the 2 hours on stage are that's what it's all about. It's the other 22 hours that beats the heck out of you, but it beats hot mopping.
The early days, your high school jamming as students at Garfield High School, East LA. How did you eventually all come together for the earliest incarnations of Los Lobos?
We all met in high school. We were friends before we ever were musicians together. Well, you know the dynamic. You're out of high school. You're still living at home. 3 square meals. Mamacita, of course, is making like some killer food. So everything's kind of cool, and you get time on your hands. And the natural progression of things would start to play music together. David and I played in a kind of garage rock band. Conrad had a band. Caesar had this like 15-piece soul band,
wow.
But we were friends and hanging out together during the day and whatever, and then come the weekend or evening rehearsals with our bands, we kind of disappeared for a while, but then we'd find ourselves back in the backyard just hanging out.
Which of you was the most instrumental in getting you guys together? Was there one person who said, why don't we just all get together?
I think what it was, since we're all kind of hanging together anyway,
mm-hmm.
and this is the true story. We're all hanging out together. One of our mom's birthday. And we just figured, why don't we learn a couple Mexican songs to play? Mañanitas are like at 5 in the morning. We're up anyway. We pulled out the records out of our folks' record collection. We were rock and roll guys. So we sat there and we tried to learn them, and we realized that, man, this is not easy. We always took it for granted. And that was just so fascinating to us as musicians that we just dove into it. And it got to a point that we were learning these songs. We were playing a couple little local gigs, little tariadas at a park or at a VFW hall or something. And it finally got to a point when we had to make a decision if we wanted to do this full time. It started to actually collide with the bands we were playing with. I think Caesar was the last one to disband his group, and we just started doing this full time. And that's really really how this band started.
Mexican-American musicians, they have the obvious influence by sounds from both sides of the border, and you're talking about trying to put together Las Mañanitas. How did the band decide, well, we're gonna start leaning more towards rock, or we're gonna lean towards more traditional Mexican?
It was all feel from the very beginning. Well, it started as a challenge, Mexican music at that point, we became aware of it. We realized how difficult it was to play, and it went beyond that. First it was, rancheras and mariachi music, then we discovered music from Veracruz, jarocho music, Huasteco, all of this stuff, and we spent 10 years. We put away the amp and the Strats, and we just said, this is all we did. We collected Mexican instruments. We asked older musicians how they were played, and we just completely immersed ourselves in música folclórica for 10 years. And then it just got to a point. Here we are out of high school. Fast forward 10 years, we're still doing this, but our lives are getting a little more complicated. We've got some kids. We're married. There's a responsibility to go along with that, and all along keeping our main focus and our commitment to playing music together, things got kind of tough. But everybody, all our families, are supported. I think they recognized that there was something very special going on, and so it was worth the sacrifice, even though it got difficult. But toward the end of the 70s, till about 1980, we found ourselves playing like in a Mexican restaurant because we needed to make an income. And we had started off wanting to kind of redefine what most people perceived as Mexican music, which is, the guys with the trumpets and all that. It goes, well, that's just mariachi music. We were exposing all this music that really was from, regional Mexican music that a lot of people never heard. And that's what we were doing. Then we found ourselves, 10 years later, in a Mexican restaurant, doing exactly what we were opposed to from the beginning, doing the Cuando Caliente el Sol and all the typical kind of stuff.
Standards, yeah.
And it was driving us crazy. Right? So we started to get involved in Tex-Mex music. David picked up an accordion and started to fool with that. Caesar got a bajo sexto, and we dusted off the drum kit, and we said, okay, Louie, you be the drummer. Okay, it was just real punk rock kind of aesthetic, because if you look at a norteño band, it's kind of like a rock band. Drums, bass, guitar, accordion instead of a lead guitar or whatever. But so it was easy for us to get back into rock and roll again. Of course, we got so damn loud that we got fired from the Mexican restaurant we were playing at. Found ourselves back in the garage again. Okay, now what do? We got to find ourselves a gig, and we started playing, weddings and whatever was going on the weekend. And parallel to that, there was a scene happening in Hollywood. It was, punk rock. Let's take music back, and out of that scene, there was the Roots revival with bands like the Blasters, and so we packed up the van and we made the trip across the LA River.
I've heard the infamous story of performing with the Plugs in Public Image.
Right.
Now, did you know Tito La Riva and those guys from around the area, and that's how you guys got
No, we actually, before Los Lobos ever packed up the van and crossed the river, David and myself were heading over there to check out bands. The punk rock thing was kind of just really raw and exciting, and we had a friend who was like way into it, so we jumped into his Volkswagen Bug, and we go check out bands like the Plugs, Fear, and Circle Jerks, and all that stuff. And it was cool, it was just all packed into these little basements of Chinese restaurants in Hollywood or something, And it was exciting. It was an exciting scene. Then we'd come back across the river, and then we'd play our wedding or whatever we were doing, One of those trips over there, we heard a band called the Blasters, and we go like, wait a second, there's something different here, they were playing jump blues and rockabilly, and then there was other rockabilly bands starting to come up. These cowpunk bands were playing like a country punk rock kind of thing going on, and so that Roots thing started to make its way into the scene over there, and young bands from East LA, the punk rock bands that used to make regular trips out there, and this made sense to us. We went and we heard the Blasters, and we met them, and we talked to them, and they said, hey, we're from the East Side too. We're from Downey, and we've got to be friends with them. And finally, they invited us to open a show for them at the Whiskey A Go Go, which is now kind of a legendary show because we opened for them, and the whole scene kind of opened up to us. Dito I had met on one of those trips to Hollywood, and to this day, I've never asked him, and I don't even know if I want to put him on the spot, but I've always wanted to ask him, hey Dito, when you called me up and said, hey, does your band want to open up for Public Image? We're doing the show. Were you kind of setting us up? Did you know that this was a weird thing, and we were going to go up there and play traditional Mexican music and not get pelted with
like they throw you out there to the wolves. No pun intended.
Yeah. But I've never asked them that, and I've always kind of just left it alone, because we did in fact go out there, and we did in fact get everything that they could get their hands on thrown at us. But for us, most bands would have just ran back to their very provincial, safe little neighborhood in East LA and said, I'm never going to do that again. But no, not for us. We came back and we were ready to go back and get some more.
Yeah, I mean, and all that stuff's, people are throwing stuff at you and you're spitting at you. I mean, what is going through your heads? Are you like, how can you describe that feeling?
It's like a bungee jump. It's like this incredible rush of adrenaline and this rush of like fear, and so fucking exciting. You can't help it.
Yeah.
We had brought, this is like a big deal. Hey, we're playing this big show, right? And we brought like our wives, and somebody brought like a tia or something with it, and they were like backstage, and we literally ran off as soon as they started to throw like the real serious projectiles.
Yeah.
We ran off. We lasted like about 8 minutes out there. We literally ran off there as things really, the dangerous things started flying. Went to the backstage area, and our family was in like tears. It was like this was the worst thing that ever could happen, and we had these silly, weird grins on our face. We're like, wow, all right, let's do it again, damn it, And they couldn't figure out what the hell we were doing.
How old were you guys at that time?
We made the decision to become rock stars as adults. We were like, I don't know, late 20s maybe.
Did you get to meet John Lydon at that show?
No, there was a very, kind of, and it's something like we experienced when we toured with The Clash too. This almost like, this I don't even really call it a veil of security. It's almost like they're holed up in their dressing room or in their bus or something, and they don't come out until it's time to play. So we never did see him.
You met Steve Berlin through the Blasters.
Right.
Did you ask Steve Berlin to join, or did he just jump in the band when he started getting involved with more of the production end of things?
Yeah, I think we left a window open. He just jumped in the van one day as we were driving through Hollywood. I mean, there'd be some nights at the Blasters we'd be playing, and we'd be going on like 1 a.m. somewhere, and he'd show up. It was always amazing because we said, well, where's Steve? Well, I guess maybe he's not going to make it. Okay, cool. We go up on stage, and just before we were ready to hit the first note, it just added a perfect element, component to what we were doing at the time. Ironically, for the Tex-Mex music. He had never heard that stuff. He didn't know how to play it or anything, and he was learning these accordion riffs, Steve would come over, and I'd watch Steve and Dave, working out the parts on Selma or something, and these parts aren't easy. They're good. And he's playing these riffs and struggling with it, and this is a guy who's Coltrane, and here we are, our fingers are used to playing, Crossroads or some Zeppelin tune or something, and here we are trying to learn requinto parts for some Mexican song, and we're struggling with it. That's what was so fascinating for us when we rediscovered Mexican music.
Let's go right into when you got hooked up with Slash Records. You put out the singles, the EP, and A Time to Dance.
Yeah.
Then How Will the Wolf Survive comes out in '84. Reading about you in Rolling Stone is how I discovered you in high school, and they're going crazy over Los Lobos. I mean, I'm looking at fellow Chicanos in there being considered, the greatest rock and roll band of the time at that moment in '84, and there you are with Prince, Bruce Springsteen, R.E.M. How did you guys handle all that attention?
It was an amazing time. It was really an amazing time. With the EP alone, we were touring out of a 1978 Dodge van or something like that. I don't know what it was. Getting like one motel room and all sneaking in there, Mm-hmm. And just we were in New Orleans, Louisiana, when we got phone call in the morning, and we literally were all sleeping in one hotel room. We'd take the beds apart. Somebody would then do a coin toss. Who's going to sleep on the box spring? Who's going to sleep on the mattress? And we get a phone call from our publicist that said, you won a Grammy. And it's just like, what? So here we are jumping around, and then it's just an amazing thing. Yeah, I mean, how does stuff happen? We put out that record, and we were like at the top of the critics
polls and everything.
Everywhere, and Rolling Stone named us Band of the Year, tied with Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. I mean, how does this stuff happen?
You guys are the real American experience. So just pick up a Los Lobos record, close your eyes, and that's what it is.
Yeah, well, it's true, because we're an example of a very seamless combination of being American, being Mexican. It's very seamless, it's very natural, and that's what it's supposed to be.
La Bamba. Got to talk about La Bamba, because just kind of blew the roof off of everybody. I think I've watched documentaries, and a lot of people thought that Los Lobos wrote La Bamba. They didn't even know anything about Richie Valens. They thought it was Los Lobos. But how was that working with Luis Valdez and getting the blessing from the Valens family? And once again, you guys are chosen to be the sound. I mean, smack dab right in the 80s of an important time for, especially, and Latinos again too with that movie.
Well, we're incredibly, of course, without saying, honored to be part of that. We never had a clue that it was going to be as huge as it was. Even I don't think the motion picture, they even expected it to be a blockbuster hit that it was. It just happened at the right time. It was really an American story. Touched a lot of people.
And you guys are so closely connected to that. You guys almost have the same story. Of course, you guys, thank God, are still alive.
Yeah, I think about it every time I get into a small airplane. Right?
Don't wear a talisman. Yeah. Do you guys still enjoy playing La Bamba today?
Yeah, well, we did go through a period where of course, like I'm sure Jimi Hendrix, felt the same way about Foxy Lady for a while. Jim Morrison and the Doors, Light My Fire. It just, there's the one song that everybody is remembered for. Yeah, I think we went through that. We went through a little bit of an identity crisis. Yeah. And what did we do? The follow-up to that was La Pistola y el Corazón.
Yeah.
People thought we were crazy.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. How was the response to when you went to the label with that?
Oh, they thought we were out of our minds. But we went and we talked to Lenny Warnick, who was president of the company, who has been... He was like our A&R guy, We were able to go knock on the door and walk in and talk to him anytime we wanted. And a real music guy, producer, back when there wasn't like these, corporate guys that have no idea of what music's all about that are put in place in these record companies, CEOs, And we walked in there and it was right after La Bamba, and we brought a tape of some stuff that we had done in the early years, the folklorico years. Played it for him, and he heard it, and he said, "Wow!" Because at that point, the record company didn't even know about the early years. And we played it for him. And he said, "Man, this is incredible." And then we said, "Lenny, this is what we would like to do for our next record." And he said, he looked at us, and his eyes didn't actually get like saucers, but he did say, "You really want to do this, huh?" And we said, "Yep." And he said, "All right, you go and make the record you want to make. Let me figure out the rest." And then that's when all this people started writing about commercial suicide. But that's the only thing we could do. We couldn't do anything else. We couldn't just make another rock record. We definitely were going to make La Bamba number 2, and we didn't. We decided to take all that incredible focus, all of that attention, and direct it to something that really meant something to us as music of our culture.
Oh yeah, and it's an immortal album.
It's an amazing record. I love that record.
Yeah, it was like that's almost like the album where it seemed like you guys would do now.
Yeah, that's why it was perceived as absolutely insane. That is what we've always done.
Yeah.
We've always done things that are unpredictable, and it's not for shock value. Mm-hmm. It's not because we want to do things just to make people confuse people. I mean, we made Kiko because it felt right, and I don't know how it happens. We managed to, after all these years, 35 years this November, to maintain that sense of enthusiasm and that sense of discovery. I don't know how it happened.
What is next for Los Lobos after you complete the tour for Town and the City?
We're just finishing up our contract with Hollywood Records. The last record we're going to do is actually going to be a children's record of which is, here we go again, Los Lobos doing something that nobody ever expects them to do. We're doing a children's record of Disney songs. We had done this thing a long time ago that Hal Wilner put together. It was called Stay Awake. It was a bunch of artists doing Disney songs, and we did the Monkey song, and we did it with jarranas, and we did it with guitarrón, and it was real cool. We said we'd like to do a children's record, so they said, but what about if you do all Disney songs? We thought about it for a little bit, and we said, well, we did the thing with Stay Awake. That was cool. Monkey song, that was great. Any other artist would probably be as hokey and shit, But if Los Lobos take that on, it's going to be something that no one's going to be able to expect. And I don't really know what to expect at this point, but it's going to be real cool.
Los Lobos' coolness factor is still so high. I mean, you have Jamie Hernandez from Love and Rockets, a classic, doing the art for Town and the City. Man, you guys always come back with something hot. I love it, man.
Great. Well, thank you.
Can always rely on Los Lobos to keep, us Chicanos cooler than shit.
That means a lot. Thanks.
I appreciate it. So let me just tell you a real quick story. Every time I put on How Will the Wolf Survive, it reminds me of being 16, going to Ensenada, and getting into so much trouble, man. But we listened to that all the way from McFarland all the way to crossed the border, stayed there for about a week, and came back. Man, I got into so much trouble over there, and I have such fond memories.
Where's McFarland?
McFarland is 7 miles south of Delano, so we're right here in the heart of the valley.
In the valley.
Man,
okay. All right.
I'm sure you guys have heard plenty of stuff like that. I'll let you go, man. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Come by and say hi.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. I definitely will. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, Louie Perez from Los Lobos, for spending time with the Bakotunes podcast and Moss Magazine. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Moss and Bacotopia magazines, available free all over Bakersfield. Subscribe to the Bakotunes podcast for free on your iPod. Just visit iTunes and find Bakotunes. All right, here's a classic Los Lobos track that will burn holes in your chanclas. Memories of being 16 and dancing with wild women in Ensenada, Mexico cantinas. Here's Don't Worry Baby off the Clásico How Will the Wolf Survive. Oh yeah, happy anniversary, Los Lobos celebrating 35 years together this November of 07. Peace.
Standing there by the window, staring out at the night. You got so many troubles on your nervous mind. But don't worry, baby, it's gonna work out fine. You heard the sound of footsteps stealing across the floor. He picked up the receiver, you didn't know what for. Then you saw a shadow slipping through the door. By the window, staring out at the night. You see your lover leaning against the old street light. But don't worry, baby, it's gonna be alright. He was tossing and turning, and he couldn't sleep. He said you shouldn't bother